Hey guys, it's Sithlore. Wanted to talk about Lashing Tail Kick, which is another one of the skills in 1.07 that received a significant bump or buff in weapon damage for the monk. And so as you can see, it's a roundhouse that deals 470% weapon damage. So as a roundhouse, it's going to be a small range AoE skill. So it's a fairly powerful skill when in close proximity. So as you could see from that last fight, or from that last use, it did hit multiple enemies and knocks them back quite significantly. So I'm not a huge fan of knockback, but when you're dealing with a group, then the knockback can be effective, as it gives you a little bit of a safety buff or safety buffer in order to survive the battle. That being said, if you have a lot of life on hit or things along that line, if you're using blinding flash, then you want the enemies close to you, so you may not want the knockback to take effect. So like I said, this is Lashing Tail Kick. We will continue to take a look at it just for another second. There's the knockback, and the 470% weapon damage is huge and is extremely effective. For 30 spirit, especially if you're using a fast attack, the spirit is definitely worthwhile, and you can use it quite a bit. So let's go to town and we will switch it up. So the very first one is Vulture Claw Kick. It's a slight increase in damage, going from 470 to 517, but this time it is weapon damage as fire instead of physical. So if you're using any items or skills that increase your fire damage, then this will be significantly more than the 517. So let's go down here, open up the Resplendent Chest, Spring Trap, and we'll try out this skill on the way back. So again, you've got the knockback and the increased AoE damage associated with it. So as always, you want to take out your most powerful enemies first. Keep the guys in range. Again, that's one of the disadvantages of the knockback, is when you're going to be using this skill, you're likely going to want to be using it relatively frequently, since it is a more powerful attack. And so by knocking the enemies back, you're knocking them out of range, so you can no longer use it again. Well, you can use it, but it just won't be effective, because the fewer enemies you have in the area, the less damage you're doing. So that is Vulture Tail Kick, or Vulture Claw Kick, sorry. And still can't get out of here. Alright, I think we can get out this time. So the next rune choice is Sweeping Armada. It increases the knockback by 150% and slows the enemy by 60% for 2 seconds. So if you're using this for the defensive ability, the knockback defensive ability as I mentioned, it's probably the best rune choice that you're going to see, because it is going to take enemies much longer to get back to you when they have been knocked back. As I've mentioned in many of my other videos for melee characters, I'm not a huge fan of both knockback and reduced movement speed, and so this is not a rune that I'm a big fan of. I will try to show it a couple of more times to actually see the reduced movement speed. So the reduced movement speed is 60%. So in Inferno, that really means the reduced movement speed is about 45%. So you can see they're knocked back almost across the entire screen, and it's taken them quite a while to get back to me. So it does provide, like I said, that additional defensive ability. I just don't think it's worthwhile. I think that you're going to want to keep enemies close to you when using this skill, because of the fact that the spirit cost isn't overly huge. There isn't a cooldown with it, and so being able to use it 3 or 4 times, having enemies close by, is what makes this skill effective. So Spinning Flame Kick is the next one, and this changes the dynamic. Normally you're dealing with a short range AoE skill. What Flaming Armada does is this turns it into a linear AoE skill instead. And so as you can see, it provides some distance and puts a fire tornado that goes about half the distance of the screen and is quite powerful. I don't remember. The damage is 588%, so it's more damage than any of the other rune choices. The disadvantage of this, of course, is now that it's a linear AoE skill, it's only really effective when you're first starting battle. There is some knockback, so when the enemies are knocked back, then you're going to be able to gain some benefit as well. But as soon as you start getting surrounded, by losing the short range AoE and going to a linear AoE, you're no longer going to be hitting the enemies that you once were. So although it does the most damage, and I do really like the rune choice, it's not going to help you all that significantly, except at the very, very beginning of the battle. So hard time recommending this one, although it is one of the few powerful AoE abilities or distance abilities that the monk has. And so if you're looking for a distance ability, this is probably the best one that you're going to have available to you. So the last 2 rune choices don't increase the damage, but they provide secondary effects. So the first one is Scorpion Sting. And so Scorpion Sting stuns enemies. So there's a 50% chance that it's going to stun the enemy for 1.5 seconds. So usually I am a huge advocate to anything that's got a stun associated with it. And you could see that they were stunned, although because of the powerful attack that this provides, it didn't really do much. So let's, then again, these guys are so weak that it's going to kill them in one shot too. So let's see if we can find another enemy that is a little more powerful. The thing with this skill is, although it's powerful and the stuns are great, I don't find it overly effective against elite packs. You can see here that I'm using this fairly often, and not once am I seeing... Okay, there you saw it for a very brief period of time. But the length of the stun, I do not find is overly effective, and that's the reason that I'm just not a big proponent of this skill. It did stun him at the very end, but overall the length of the stun and the amount of times that it actually triggers, for some reason, seems to be a lot less than 50%. The Hand of Yotar is the very last one, and again, this is one that I'm not a fan of. The reason being is it's a reduced movement speed of 80% or 60% in Inferno. So although the range is a little larger, you can see there how the movement speed was reduced. This is one of those skills, again, that I just don't get the benefit from because of the fact that you're a melee character, they're already in range, and so the reduced movement speed doesn't really help a whole lot. Where you really get the the only real benefit that I can see with this skill is the increased movement speed that you gain as a result. But the fact that you're going from enemy to enemy, I just don't find this overly effective, and don't recommend it as a result. So the skills that I recommend, if you're looking for your linear AoE ability, then it would be the Vulture, Spinning Flame Kick. If you're looking for your defensive ability, it's Sweeping Armada for the increased distance, and Vulture Claw Kick if you're just looking for the most bang for your buck. Scorpion King and Hand of Yurtar, I just don't find overly worthwhile, so that would be my recommendation. Thanks for watching, guys. Any questions or comments, please leave them below.